Keisha Turner woke before sunrise on most summer mornings, her room still cool in the soft light of dawn. She stretched under her blanket, ears filled with a distant hum of cicadas. The sound reminded her of the community pool where she spent so many afternoons alone. Today felt different, though. There was a small thrill in her chest as she remembered the blue water, the gentle splash of waves she created with her strokes, and the quiet freedom she felt when she swam by the time. Keisha slipped into her bright yellow swimsuit. The sun had risen higher, painting her bedroom wall with soft shadows. She tied her hair into a loose ponytail, fastening a simple green hair tie around the base. A quick breakfast of buttered toast and sliced bananas filled her stomach without weighing her down. She packed a small bag with a towel, a bottle of water, and a well-worn paperback novel. She loved stories of adventure and courage that felt like friends on her lonely swim days. When Keisha reached the pool, she took a moment at the tall fence, hands resting on the cool metal bars. The pool area lay quiet under the morning sun, with only a few cars in the parking lot. Occasionally, she heard the distant click of the pool gate opening. But at that hour, most families were still at home sipping coffee or gathering breakfast. She felt a calm settle in her chest. This quiet felt like a gift. Inside, the lifeguard's chair stood empty, waiting for the red-clad teen who usually arrived a few minutes after her. The rows of blue lounge chairs lay still, and the colorful umbrellas remained folded until the sun climbed higher. The pool's surface reflected the sky like a giant mirror, only disturbed by Dragonfly's leaf-shaped float tied to the fence. Keisha paused at the pool deck, toes brushing the rough concrete. She loved the way the stone felt under her feet, textured but gentle. She breathed in the scent of chlorine mingled with fresh air and let it settle in her lungs. Every morning felt like a blank page, waiting for her to make the first gentle stroke. Stepping in, she dipped her toes, feeling the cool water rush around her ankles. She lowered herself until just her head floated above the surface, eyes closed. The world went quiet for a moment, as if the pool itself held its breath. She opened her eyes and looked at the deep end where the water sank to 8 feet. It always looked darker there, like a secret hiding beneath the surface. Keisha pushed off the side and began to swim. Her arms moved in steady rhythm, carrying her forward. She counted her strokes in her head, 1, 2, 3, 4, until she reached the opposite wall. Then she turned and started again. The water resisted her body, guiding her, welcoming her, making each movement feel smooth and light. Here she felt powerful and free. Around lunchtime, the lifeguard Jeremy climbed into his chair. He spotted Keisha and gave a small wave. Keisha waved back, but kept swimming. She liked how Jeremy always watched carefully, but never intervened unless something was wrong. He treated her like any other swimmer, and that made her feel invisible in the best way. No one watched her too closely, but they saw her enough to keep her safe. By early afternoon, more families showed up. Parents spread towels on chairs and chatted in small circles. Children in bright swim shorts plunged in with high-pitched laughter. Keisha watched as they formed tight groups, racing each other across the pool, playing games with floating rings and splashing one another. She tried to join once or twice, but no one ever asked her to play. She would smile shyly and return to her laps, hoping someone might notice her willingness sometimes. She opened her eyes underwater to see other swimmers above, but all she saw were strangers busy with their own friends. Even at 13, she understood that fitting in could feel like solving a puzzle when you did not know the rules. She did not mind the solitude too much. She had her book and the soft hum of the water. But a small part of her longed for companionship. Between strokes, she floated on her back and looked at the sky. The clouds drifted lazily above her, and she let her mind wander to her favorite parts of her novel. The hero crossing great oceans under starry skies. In her imagination, she was that hero, discovering new lands. When she dove under, she became a sea explorer, finding sunken treasures and strange creatures in the blue depths. Her heart would beat faster, but not with fear, only excitement. Yet always, there was that gentle ache of being alone. She thought of her older sister Maya, who was away at summer camp. Maya had been her best friend until last year before the camps and the growing gap between them. Keisha missed the way they used to laugh together in the shower stall, singing silly songs. She missed Maya's sticky notes hidden in her backpack, telling her she was brave and smart. Now, those memories felt distant, like yellowed photographs at the bottom of an old box. One day, a small group of kids arrived. The older ones, maybe 15 or 16, they wore matching jerseys, as if they belonged to some team, Keisha noticed. Them at first, because they carried themselves with a confident air, striding past her like they owned the place. One of them, a tall girl with a loud laugh, tossed her bag onto a lounge chair and scanned the pool. Keisha ducked her head, concentrating on her stroke. As Keisha swam past, she felt eyes on her. A chill ran down her spine, but she reminded herself that the pool was big enough for everyone. She tried to ignore the feeling, kept her head down, and stayed in her lane. The girl called Tanya and her friends gathered at the edge of the pool, whispering to each other and pointing. Their laughter floated down to Keisha, and for a moment she felt her chest tighten. She surfaced, gasping for air, and tried to calm her breathing. She had learned breathing techniques in her lessons: inhale through the nose, exhale slowly through the mouth. She pressed her hands against the wall and closed her eyes. The water felt cool against her skin, soothing her nerves. When she opened her eyes again, the pool looked the same, vast still. Inviting, Keisha dove under and swam to the middle of the shallow end. She stayed there a moment, feeling the weightlessness of the water. Here, no one could reach her. World above felt distant. She thought about telling the lifeguard how she felt, but she worried it would make her seem weak. She did not like complaining about small things. Besides, the lifeguard only took action when he saw something serious. Gradually, she swam back to her routine, trying to reclaim the calm she felt before they arrived. Each kick, each pull, each glide through the water helped her push the anxiety away. Still, the awareness lingered. After a few minutes, she climbed out and sat at the pool's edge, dipping her feet in. The other swimmers splashed around her, but she stayed quiet. She pulled her knees close to her chest, resting her chin on them. In the distance, she saw her reflection in the water, a small girl with a serious gaze and determined shoulders. She reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. A loud splash caught her off guard. She looked up to see a young boy accidentally bump into her feet. He yelped, then looked embarrassed. Keisha smiled at him and rubbed his shoulder. "It's okay," she said softly. The boy nodded and swam away. She felt a small spark of pride she had handled that well. She was friendly, even if people did not always respond. A few moments later, Jeremy the lifeguard whistled, signaling a break. All swimmers had to leave the water for a few minutes. Keisha climbed up the ladder and stood on the deck, dripping water. She wrapped her towel around herself and sat on a lounge chair. Her book waited beside her, pages marked with a ribbon. She picked it up and read a few lines about the hero's next adventure. The older kids gathered near her, talking loudly. Keisha tried to focus on her book, but she caught bits of their conversation. Words like lone and nerd drifted to her. She felt a sting, but forced herself not to react. She reminded herself that words bounced off her, like raindrops. On a window, in that silent standoff, Keisha realized something else. She felt stronger in the water than she did on land. She could face their words with her head held high because she had mastered the water. It took practice and courage to swim alone, and she had done it day after day. The pool was her sanctuary, and she would protect it by being the best swimmer she could be. When the break ended, she returned to the water, pushing aside fear and doubt. The summer sun warmed her back as she dove in. The world above faded away, and Keisha embraced the peace of the blue depths. She felt ready for anything, even if that meant facing Tanya and her friends again. She was Keisha Turner, a brave swimmer, who belonged in the pool just as much as anyone else. She would prove it one stroke at a time. Keisha returned to the pool the next morning, her heart a little heavier, but her spirit still determined. She carried her bag the same way she always did, with her towel folded neatly on top and her small novel tucked inside. The sun rose slowly. In the sky, painting the pool deck with warm light, she took a deep breath, reminding herself that the water was her friend as Keisha stepped through the gate. She saw Jeremy, the lifeguard, already perched in his tall chair. He offered her a friendly nod, and she managed a small smile before heading to the changing area. She changed into her yellow swimsuit quickly, eager to be in the water. With each step toward the pool, she felt the familiar buzz of excitement and calm that washed over her whenever she swam. The pool glimmered under the sun. Its surface looked like glass cracked by the breeze. Keisha paused at the edge and closed her eyes. She let the sounds of children laughing and water splashing fill her ears. She dipped her toes into the water and pushed off the side, gliding into the gentle embrace of the pool. The water lifted her weight, made her movements easy and smooth. She felt at home. Not long after she began her laps, she heard the first rude comment. She surfaced near the shallow end, breathing in through her nose and out her mouth. Caught the sound of Tanya's voice. "Hey, look, it's that lonely girl again," Tanya called. Her voice was loud and rough like the scrape of sandpaper. A circle of older kids gathered around her, giggling. Keisha froze for a moment, her chest tightening. She stared at the deep end, where the water looked darker. She wanted to swim away, but the pool was small, and the bullies claimed every corner. She swallowed hard and turned her back to them, focusing on her strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, each movement steady. She counted in her mind, letting the rhythm calm her. "Girl, why don't you go home?" one of the kids shouted. He wasn't as tall as Tanya, but his voice carried like thunder across the pool. Keisha kept swimming, trying not to listen. Heart raced, but she focused on the feel of water against her arms. She thought of how the water supported her, how it never judged her. The next taunt came as a splash. Tanya kicked her leg hard, sending a wave of water at Keisha's face. The cold spray stung her eyes. She sputtered and paused, wiping her face with her sleeve. Her cheeks burned and she felt tears prick her eyes. She did not want to cry in front of everyone. She inhaled slowly, counting to 5, then dove under the water. Under the surface, everything muffled. The bullies' laughter sounded like muffled bells. She stretched her legs and kicked toward the other end of the pool. When she emerged, she was safe in the deeper water. She pushed off the wall and began her laps again. She kept her head down and her eyes on the bottom tiles. But the harassment only grew. Tanya and her friends moved along the edge of the pool, tracking Keisha. Each time she swam past them, they found a new way to mock her. They pointed at her red swim cap. Keisha wore it to keep her hair out of her face and called it ugly. They shouted that she looked like a clown. They made fun of her thin body, comparing her to sticks. At first, Keisha felt the old sting of shame and hurt. She wanted to shout back, to defend herself. But she remembered her mother's words. Sometimes mercy makes your heart stronger than anger. So she kept her mouth shut and continued her swimming. She pushed her legs, pulled her arms, and let the water carry her. One bully, a tall boy with a baseball cap turned backward, swam alongside her, matching her strokes. He grabbed her leg for a moment, trying to pull her off balance. Keisha did not panic. She remembered her swim lessons. Stay calm, keep breathing, and use gentle strength. She moved her leg away from his grasp and kicked harder. Let go with a grunt and drifted away. Seeing that, Tanya's group laughed louder. The sound echoed off the water and the pool's walls. Keisha felt her chest tighten, but this time she let the feeling push her forward instead of holding her down. Increased her speed, slicing through the water like a small, determined fish. She reached the far wall, turned, and came back faster than before as she swam. She noticed a small cut on her wrist from the rough edge of the pool ladder the day before. She reached the surface and paused for a moment to rub at the skin. A drop of blood mixed with the pool water, making a small red swirl. She winced, but did not cry out. She used her towel later to press the cut. By mid-afternoon, more families arrived, and the pool became crowded. Keisha used the change to her advantage and drifted among the swimmers. The bullies stayed near the shallow end, where they could gather and watch. Keisha swam in lanes between groups of splashing children. No one paid her much attention now. She felt a bit safer. After several laps, she climbed out for a short rest. She wrapped her towel around herself and sat at the edge, feet in the water. She opened her book, but could not focus on the words. Her mind replayed the day's events, the splashes, the shouts, the laughter at her expense. She closed her book and stared at the water. She thought of her swim coach's advice. Use your mind as much as your body. Swim with purpose. She decided she would not let the bully's words decide her worth. She was a strong swimmer, and the pool was her place to grow stronger. She stood, folded her towel neatly, and climbed back in. As she swam, Tanya's group grew bolder. One of them held a floating ring and lifted it above the water just as Keisha approached. She did not see it in time. Her arm collided with the plastic, and she lost her rhythm. She splashed and sputtered, momentarily off balance. The bully laughed and tossed the ring away. Keisha regained control. She squinted at the bully, but refrained from responding. She tilted her head down and swam on. She did a few more strokes, then turned sharply and headed for the ladder. She climbed out, water dripping from her hair, and stood tall on the deck. She patted herself dry, ignoring the stares around her. Then the worst happened. Tanya and her friends followed her out of the pool. They crowded her at the ladder. Tanya glared at her. "You think you're so brave, swimming by yourself?" she sneered. Before Keisha could step aside, Tanya shoved her back toward the water. Two other friends grabbed Keisha's arms. Keisha's heart pounded. She stumbled half in and half out of the pool, arms pinwheeling. The lifeguard blew his whistle sharply from above. The shrill sound cut through the chaos. Tanya's friends froze and backed off. Keisha dropped to her knees on the deck, chest heaving. She clutched the ladder's rung for support, squeezing her eyes shut. Jeremy, the lifeguard, blew his whistle again. "Everyone out of the pool," he shouted. He climbed down quickly, his eyes fierce. He stood between Keisha and the bullies. Tanya and her group looked shocked. The other swimmers backed away. Whispering, Chaho took a deep breath and lifted her head. She met Jeremy's calm but firm gaze. He asked her quietly if she was okay. Her voice shook as she answered, "Yes." She did not cry, but tears hovered at the corners of her eyes. She wrapped her arms around herself and nodded. Jeremy addressed the bullies. "You'll need to sit in the shade for the rest of the day. I'll be talking with your parents later." He pointed to a row of lounge chairs under the umbrellas. Tanya and her friends slunk away, muttering under their breath. Keisha watched them go, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. She climbed back into the pool and swam to the deep end. The water closed over her head, muffling the world. She swam a few strong laps, feeling her anger fade into determination. She reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone. When she finally climbed out for another break, the other swimmers gave her space. Some offered quiet smiles. A young girl in pink floaties waved at her, and Keisha waved back. The girl's mother gave a small nod of approval. Keisha realized that people could choose kindness instead of cruelty. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Keisha gathered her things. The pool had become quieter, and the light turned golden. She walked past the bullies on her way out. Their eyes flicked away from her as she held her head high. She felt tired but proud. She had faced their mockery and their shove. She was still standing. At home that evening, Keisha sat on her bed and wrote in her journal. She described how the bullies tried to scare her, how she kept her calm, and how the lifeguards stepped. And she wrote that she felt scared, but that she also felt brave. She closed the journal and climbed into bed, her mind resting on the day's lessons. Courage, a calm, and the strength to keep swimming, no matter how rough the water became. ChatGPT said. Keisha woke early with a sense of unease that she could not shake. Even though the morning sun felt warm on her face, her stomach twisted with nervous energy. She dressed carefully in her yellow swimsuit, the same one she always wore, hoping it would bring her good luck. On her walk to the pool, she tried to remember how the water had felt like a friend yesterday after the bullies pushed her. She breathed deeply and told herself she was ready for whatever might come. When she arrived, the pool looked calm and inviting. The concrete deck was still damp from the sprinklers, and the rows of empty chairs waited quietly. Jeremy, the lifeguard, was already perched high above, scanning the water. He saw Keisha and gave her a reassuring nod. She returned the nod and stepped through the gate, reminding herself that the pool was her place of peace. As Keisha tied her towel around her bag and walked past the lifeguard chair, she noticed Tanya and her group standing near the deep end. Again, they talked among themselves, casting sidelong glances at Keisha. She paused for a moment, her heart pounding, but forced herself forward. She would not let them chase her away. Slipping into the water, Keisha felt the cool embrace of the pool wash over her. She took a deep breath and pushed off the wall, gliding into her first lap. Her strokes were smooth, each arm reaching forward and pulling the water behind her. She focused on the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4 counting in her head to steady her mind. Halfway through her second lap, she sensed movement behind her. She glanced over her shoulder and saw the group following her path. Tanya floated near the edge, watching intently, while 2 of her friends moved quietly in the water, matching Keisha's pace. A pit formed in Keisha's stomach. She pressed her lips together and turned her head back, determined not to show fear. As she reached the deep end, she slowed down, planning to touch the wall, turn, and head back. But before she could, Tanya's tall figure sprang from the water beside her. Nanya grabbed Keisha's shoulder and yanked her under. The shock of cold water flooded Keisha's lungs as she sank down, her arms flailing wildly. The pool's bottom, tiles rushed toward her face, but she clenched her eyes shut. Keisha's heart thundered in her ears. She kicked out, trying to reach the surface, but Tanya pushed her down again. Water filled her nose and mouth as she fought to breathe. Her legs swept backward, but the deep end was over her head, and her lungs screamed for air.
Ah!
The 2 friends held her arms, pinning them to her sides as they laughed above the water. The world seemed to tilt, and Keisha felt the panic rise like a wave bigger than the pool itself. In that moment, a memory flashed in her mind, her first swim lesson when she learned to float on her back. The instructor had told her to stay calm, relax every muscle, and let the water hold her up. Keisha forced herself to remember that lesson. She released her struggle against the water's surface and tilted her head back, arching her back gently. The water rose beneath her head, lifting it, even as Tanya and her friends continued to push. Slowly, Keisha's face broke through the surface, she gasped, sucking in air as her lungs burned. She felt the 2 boys' grip weaken when Tanya's initial shove lost strength. The lifeguard's whistle blew sharply above her, and Jeremy had spotted the struggle from his chair. His voice cut through the chaos. "Stop. Let her go." Aya hesitated, her hand still on Keisha's shoulder. The 2 boys released her arms. At the sound of the whistle, Keisha seized the moment. She kicked her legs strongly, pushing her feet toward the pool ladder. Each kick carried her closer to safety. The water around her churned from her frantic motion. As her fingertips touched the ladder's bottom rung, Keisha reached for it and wrapped her hand around the metal bar. She pulled herself up, rung by rung, while Tanya and her friends drifted back, their faces pale with surprise. When Keisha's chin cleared the surface, she gasped and coughed, water spraying from her mouth. Her hair clung to her forehead, and her swimsuit strap had slipped off one shoulder, but she did not care. Just as she swung her leg over the ladder to climb onto the deck, Tanya lunged forward one last time. Her hand slammed against Keisha's leg, trying to knock her back into the water. Keisha's foot skidded on the ladder rung, but she managed to steady herself. She planted both feet on the bottom step and pushed upward with everything she had left. Tanya's shove sent a spray of water over the edge of the pool, but Keisha gripped the side tightly and hauled herself out with a burst of adrenaline. She tumbled onto the deck in a pool of water, landing on her knees. Her chest heaved as she gasped for air, tears mixing with droplets of pool water on her cheeks. Tanya and her friends sank back into the water, blinking up at her. Jeremy burst from the stairs and knelt beside Keisha. His voice was calm but firm. "Are you all right?" he asked, gently checking her for injuries. Keisha nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She could barely speak, but she managed to whisper, "Yes." He offered her his towel and helped her wrap it around herself. Tanya's group floated near the ladder, their eyes downcast. Jeremy turned to them. "That behavior is unacceptable. Get out of the pool now and sit in the shade." His tone left no room for argument. Tanya and her friends climbed out in silence, dripping wet and ashamed. They trudged to the chairs under the umbrellas, their heads hung low. Keisha sat up, slowly pressing her wet hair from her face. Her legs felt shaky, but she refused to let herself slide back into the water. Jeremy stayed with her until he was sure she was okay. A few other swimmers gathered at a safe distance, offering quiet sympathy. One girl handed Keisha a clean towel, and another gave her a gentle thumbs up. Keisha wrapped the towels tightly around herself and took deep breaths. She felt exhausted, but also strangely strong. She had faced terror under the water and had used her mind and body to save herself. Even though the world felt shaky, she felt a spark of pride. She had not let the bullies drown her literally and figuratively. After a few minutes, Jeremy helped Keisha to her feet. He offered to walk her to the locker room, but she shook her head. She wanted to walk on her own, to prove that she could stand without help. She gathered her bag and stood tall, gripping her towel like armor. The other swimmers gave her space and time to collect herself. On her way out, she passed Tanya's group sitting silently in the shade. Their eyes met hers for a moment. Keisha saw fear there, not the confident cruelty from before, but a flicker of understanding. For a brief second, she wondered if they regretted their actions. Then she turned and walked away, leaving them behind. As she stepped outside the pool gate, the late afternoon sun warmed her back. She took a deep breath of fresh air, tasting chlorine and freedom. She realized that the pool would always carry the memory of that terrifying moment, but it would also hold the memory of her escape. She had learned that courage and calm could save her, even when danger felt unstoppable. By the time Keisha reached home, her legs trembled with fatigue. She sat at her desk and opened her journal. Her fingers shook as she wrote down every detail: the cold shock of the water, the panic in her lungs, the memory of the float lesson, the lifeguard's whistle, and her own determination to survive. She wrote the words slowly, believing that naming her fear would make it smaller. When she finished, Keisha closed the journal and placed it beside her bed. She changed into fresh clothes and lay down, staring at the ceiling. Her heart still raced, but she felt calmer than before. She reminded herself that she was a swimmer, brave and strong. She had faced her worst fear and come out alive. In the quiet of her room, Keisha smiled faintly. Tomorrow, she would return to the pool again. She would swim her laps, push her limits, and maybe even make friends. The bully's attempt had thrown her, but it had not broken her. She was ready for the next stroke, the next breath, and whatever came after. She closed her eyes, ready to rest, ready to dream of calm waters and bright horizons. Keisha felt the pool's cool water wash over her shoulders as she climbed down the metal ladder the next morning. Her muscles still trembled slightly from the terror of the day before, but her mind felt sharper too. She told herself again that the water was her friend, not an enemy. She pushed off the side and began her steady strokes, one arm pulling, one arm pushing, her legs kicking in rhythm. Each movement reminded her of every lesson she had learned, both in the pool and in life. Stay calm, keep going, believe in yourself. Midway through her lap, she sensed someone swimming beside her. She glanced over and saw a boy a few years older than her. He moved quietly, matching her speed without speaking, wore a plain white swim cap and goggles pushed up on his forehead. Keisha pulled ahead, hoping he would swim past, but instead he kept the same pace. She tried to ignore him, focusing on her count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stroke, kick, breathe. But she felt his eyes on her back. After a few lengths, she climbed out for a short break. She wrapped her towel around her shoulders and sat on the edge, letting her feet dangle in the water. The boy climbed out too and stood a few feet away, watching her. He smiled and waved, and for a moment Keisha felt both surprised and uneasy. She remembered how Tanya and her friends had targeted her, and her heart beat faster again. He smiled more broadly and said, "Hey, you're really good at swimming." His voice was calm and kind. Keisha looked at him, surprised. "Thanks," she whispered. She dropped her eyes to the water. She wasn't used to compliments from other kids. Most people simply ignored her, or worse. The boy shrugged and introduced himself. "I'm Malik. I've seen you here a few times. Keisha's lips formed a small smile. I'm Keisha, she said. She felt a small warmth in her chest, like sunshine breaking through clouds. No one had ever taken the time to watch her, swim before, and then speak kindly to her. Malik sat beside her and leaned forward, toes still in the water. I used to be scared of coming here, he said. I thought all the kids would laugh at me, but I love swimming. Keisha nodded. She understood that fear. They're okay once you get in the water, she said. Here, you're free. Malik laughed softly. I like the way you put that. They sat quietly for a moment, watching the pool. Keisha felt less alone with Malik there. After a bit, Jeremy the lifeguard blew his whistle and signaled that the break was over. Malik stood and addressed Keisha. Do you want to swim some more with me? He asked. Keisha hesitated. She glanced at the deep end where Tanya's group often loitered. Her heart thudded. But then she thought of yesterday's attack and how she had stood up for herself. I'd like that, Keisha said. She climbed back into the water and Malik followed. They swam side by side, talking softly between breaths. Malik told her about his older brother, who had taught him to swim when he was 6. Keisha told him about her sister Maya, who had sent her postcards from camp. In the water, talking felt easier than on land. After a few laps, Tanya and her friends appeared at the pool deck. They leaned over the rail, staring at Keisha and Malik. Tanya's eyes narrowed when she saw them swimming together. Keisha felt a flicker of fear. She and Malik slowed, drifting in the deep end. Malik noticed her unease and tightened his stroke, guiding them both toward the shallow side. When they reached shallow water, Malik turned to Keisha. Don't let them bother you, he said quietly. I've got your back. Keisha felt a surge of gratitude. She nodded. Malik smiled and gave her a quick thumbs up. Dove under and swam off, leaving Keisha to join him. The two of them began a friendly race, kicking strong and surfacing. With laughter, for a few moments, Keisha forgot about her fears. The bullies watched but did not follow them into the water. Tanya's group muttered to one another. Tanya's face looked angry and confused. She did not understand why Keisha had an ally now. She stomped away, dragging her friends with her. Keisha watched them go, feeling a small victory inside her. Later, when Jeremy called for another break, Malik and Keisha sat together on the deck. Malik pointed to a row of lounge chairs beneath a wide umbrella. Come sit with me, he said. They walked over and sat side by side, sharing a bottle of water. Around them, children chatted and splashed, but Keisha felt safe. She looked at Malik and realized how much stronger she felt with someone by her side. As they talked, a small girl in pink floaties approached them. She stopped shyly and asked Malik, Can I sit here? Malik nodded and patted the towel next to him. The little girl sat down, hugging her knees. Keisha smiled at her. Hi, she said softly. The little girl grinned, and they began talking about their favorite swimming games. Malik watched them with a proud smile, and Keisha felt warm inside. By mid-afternoon, the pool had emptied of families. Tanya's group had already left after Jeremy warned them about their behavior the day before. Keisha realized she had not seen them in a while. She leaned back on the lounge chair, the umbrella casting a cool shade over her. Malik lay his head back and closed his eyes. Keisha did the same. The world felt quiet and comforting. After a moment, Jeremy stepped down from his chair and approached them. He held a folded sheet of paper in his hand. Keisha Malik, he said, smiling. I talked with your parents on the phone, and they're okay with you too organizing a swim buddy sign-up for the pool. Would you like to run it? Keisha and Malik looked at each other with surprise. Really? Malik asked. Jeremy nodded. I think it could help everyone make new friends. Keisha's heart leaped. She had wanted more swimmers to join her, but never thought she could lead something. I'd love to, she said. Malik grinned. Me too. Jeremy handed them the paper and explained how the sign-up would work. Keisha read the simple instructions. Swimmers could write their name and their skill level, and then match up with a buddy of similar skill. It's a great way to make new friends, Jeremy said. When Jeremy returned to his chair, Keisha and Malik crawled onto the pool deck and set up a small table with paper and pencils. They posted a sign, Swim Buddy, Siggin' Up. A few curious parents and children stopped, wrote their names, and walked away with a new friend. Keisha felt proud as she watched the pool transform from a place of loneliness to one of laughter and teamwork. By the end of the day, Keisha and Malik had matched 10 pairs of swimmers. Some held hands nervously as they jumped in together. Others swam laps side by side, chatting and encouraging each other. Keisha spotted the little girl in pink floaties, giggling with her new buddy. Keisha waved at her, and the girl waved back with a bright smile. When the pool closed, Keisha packed her bag slowly, savoring the last moments of the day. Malik stood beside her, carrying extra sheets in case they needed more sign-ups. They walked to the gate together, chatting about the next day's plan. Keisha felt a happy tiredness in her limbs and a sense of belonging in her heart. As Keisha turned to leave, she saw Tanya watching from the fence outside. Tanya's arms were crossed, and her face looked uncertain. Keisha met her gaze for a moment, then smiled and waved. Tanya blinked, then turned away. Keisha felt a small victory. She had found her strength, her friend, and had begun to change the pool's world one swim buddy at a time. That night, Keisha wrote in her journal about Malik's help, the new swim buddy program, and how it felt to lead something positive. She described the shy smiles of new friends and the quiet pride she felt. She closed the journal and lay in bed, her mind calm. She realized that courage sometimes came not just from standing alone, but from standing together, and she could not wait to dive into the water again. Keisha arrived at the pool early the next morning. Sun still low in the sky. She carried her swim bag over her shoulder and stepped through the gate with a steady heartbeat. Ooh. Today felt different from the first time she had come alone. Stronger. She felt proud. She headed toward the sign-up table where Malik was already waiting, folding extra sheets of paper and arranging pencils. "Good morning," Keisha said, smiling. Malik looked up and returned her smile. "Morning," he replied. "Ready for another great day?" Keisha nodded. She spread her towel on a chair near the table and took out her notebook to jot down ideas they had learned yesterday that some kids wanted help finding a buddy who swam at the same pace. Keisha sketched a simple chart, 2 columns labeled skill level and name. She showed it to Malik. He grinned. "That will help a lot," he said. As the sun climbed higher, swimmers began to arrive. First came toddlers with their parents toddling into the water on floaties. Next came older kids, chatting and laughing. As they left shoes by the fence, Keisha and Malik greeted each person with friendly waves and invited them to sign up. Many wrote their names and ticked a box for beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Soon, the table held papers filled with names. Keisha watched as Malik matched 2 first graders who had both checked beginner. He showed them how to hold hands and practice kicking together. The little girls giggled as Malik held out a kickboard for them. Keisha cheered them on. "Great job," she called. The girls beamed and paddled off, holding hands and learning to trust each other in the water. Nearby, 2 teenage boys who marked advance signed up together. Keisha swapped a few names and then pointed them to the deep end. They nodded and clapped their hands before jumping in with big cannonballs. Water splashed everywhere, and both Keisha and Malik laughed at the spectacle. It warmed Keisha's heart to see so many people choosing friendship over loneliness. The early rush, the pool grew quieter for a while. Keisha and Malik sat in the shade and drank water. Keisha closed her eyes and breathed in the smell of chlorine and fresh air. She thought about how far she had come. She had once been the lone swimmer, nervous and afraid. Now she helped others join together. She glanced at Malik. He caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. She smiled back. A family arrived later with 3 siblings who looked unsure. They hovered at the edge of the pool, reluctant to jump in. Keisha stood and waved. "Would you like a swim buddy?" she asked. The oldest sister nodded hesitantly. "I'm okay, but my little brother is scared," she said. Keisha knelt and took the boy's hand. "I'll be your buddy," she offered gently. The boy's eyes widened, and he clung to her hand tight. Keisha led him into the shallow end, spinning him around until he giggled. Soon, he floated happily beside her. The siblings thanked Keisha and Malik before leaving. The parents smiled gratefully. "You two are making this place safe for everyone," one one mother said. Keisha's chest warmed at the words. She realized that her own courage had sparked kindness. In others, she felt proud of what she and Malik had started. Soon it was lunchtime, and Jeremy blew his whistle for a break. Everyone climbed out, dripping and laughing. Keisha and Malik gathered their papers and pencils. They stood together under the umbrella as swimmers rested. Keisha opened her notebook and wrote down notes. More pencils, extra sign-up sheets maybe, small prizes for the swim buddies at the end of summer. Malik suggested they ask the park commission for colorful ribbons to tie on floaties. Keisha loved the idea. She wrote it down, Malik, she said softly. Thank you for helping me. Malik shook his head. No thank you, he said. You gave me the courage to speak up here. Before, I watched from the side. Now I'm part of something. Keisha looked at her friend, grateful. She felt less alone in the world when she had someone to lean on. After the break, they climbed back into the water to help guide swimmers. Keisha showed two shy preteens how to practice backstroke together. Malik got two sisters to race side by side, cheering as they reached the wall. Swimmers helped each other, passing kickboards, giving gentle pushes at the start, and clapping when someone made progress. Laughter echoed off the pool's walls. Mid-afternoon, Keisha spotted Tanya at the pool gate, holding her bag and staring inside. Keisha's chest tightened.
Oh.
She remembered the days when Tanya and her friends had been mean. She had felt scared and alone. Now she felt calm as she swam. Up to the edge, Tanya met her gaze and raised an eyebrow. Keisha stood tall and said, Hi, Tanya. Would you like to join our swim buddy program? Tanya blinked in surprise. No one had ever asked her that before. Tanya hesitated, then shook her head. No thanks, she mumbled and walked away. Keisha felt a mix of relief and sadness. She knew Tanya carried her own fears and hurt. Maybe someday Tanya would learn kindness too. For now, Keisha turned back to her table and kept helping others. When the late afternoon sun warmed the water, the park families began to leave. Keisha and Malik handed out small certificates to the swim buddies. Great job helping a friend. The children held their papers proudly and waved goodbye. Keisha felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She felt happy and tired in a good way. As the pool emptied, Keisha packed away the pencils and papers. She and Malik folded the sign-up sheets into a neat stack and placed them in her bag for next time. Jeremy walked over, smiling broadly. You two did an amazing job today, he said. Look at this, pool full of friends. It changed the place for the better. Keisha looked around at the empty lanes and the chairs stacked near the fence. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Thank you, Jeremy, she said softly. We just wanted to help. Jeremy ruffled Malik's hair. You helped each other first, he said warmly. It's the best kind of help. On the walk home that evening, Keisha carried her swim bag and felt lighter than air. She thought about the swim buddy program, the happy faces, the laughter. She thought of how scary the bullies had been and how she had faced them. She thought of Malik and how their friendship had grown. She felt strong and hopeful. When she reached home, she sat at her desk and opened her journal. Her pen hovered over the blank page. She thought of all she had learned: courage, friendship, kindness, and the power of standing up for yourself and others. She wrote slowly, carefully choosing each word. She wrote about how one act of cruelty had brought the lifeguards help, how another act of kindness had brought Malik's friendship. She wrote, The pool taught me that the water will always be calm if you face your fears. After she finished, she closed the journal and placed it on her nightstand. She changed into fresh clothes and lay down in bed, her heart full. She thought of tomorrow's swim lesson and the new friends she would meet. She smiled as she drifted off to sleep, dreaming of blue water and bright smiles. Keisha Turner, the lone swimmer no more, had found her voice, her friend. In her place in the world, one stroke, one breath, one kind word at a time.